The morning began like any other Saturday in our quiet lakeside neighborhood. A soft fog rolled off the water, and the air smelled faintly of pine and fresh dew. I stood on the back porch, coffee mug in hand, watching a few ducks glide lazily across the lake. It was peaceful, the kind of silence you work years to earn. My wife Emma was still asleep after another long week of night shifts. She was a decorated U.S. Army officer, used to commanding troops and solving chaos, but she loved this small slice of calm more than anything. That peace didn't last long. At exactly 7:02 a.m., a loud, angry knock shook the front door. It wasn't the polite kind. It was the kind you feel through the floorboards, demanding attention. I frowned, set my mug down, and walked to the door. Before I even reached the handle, another boom, boom, boom echoed, followed by a sharp voice. "Police! Open up!" My heart kicked once. Police? I hadn't done a damn thing wrong, and I couldn't think of a single reason law enforcement would be at my door. I opened it carefully, half expecting a mistake. Two uniformed officers stood on my porch, one tall and broad-shouldered with a hard stare, and the other shorter, more hesitant, flipping through a small notepad. Both had that stiff, official posture, like they were ready for trouble. "Morning," I said cautiously. "Can I help you?" The taller one, Officer Raymond, according to his name tag, didn't bother returning the greeting. "We've received multiple reports from the Evergreen Estates Homeowners Association. They claim you've refused compliance with HOA standards, obstructed inspections, and engaged in hostile conduct toward HOA officials." I blinked, then laughed in disbelief. "The HOA? Are you serious?" The shorter one, Officer Perez, glanced up from his notes, clearly uncomfortable. "Sir, they stated you were violating neighborhood bylaws and refused access to your property. They've requested we conduct a visual check." I rubbed my temples, exhaling slowly. "You've got the wrong guy. This property isn't part of their HOA. It never was." The officers exchanged a skeptical look. Raymond adjusted his stance, one hand resting lightly on his duty belt. "Sir, your address is listed within their boundary map." I felt my temper flare. "That's because they drew those lines themselves. This house sits outside their jurisdiction, confirmed by the county records. They've been harassing me for months because I told their president, Karen, to stay off my land." At the mention of her name, Perez's expression flickered with recognition. He clearly knew the type. "Sir, we'll need to verify that," he said cautiously. "You can verify it all you want," I said, folding my arms. "But you're not stepping into my house without a warrant." Raymond's jaw tightened. "Sir, we're just here to de-escalate. Cooperation will make this easier for everyone." "Cooperation," I repeated dryly, "isn't the same as surrendering my rights." For a tense moment, no one moved. The wind rustled through the trees, and the only sound was the slow hum of the officers' body cameras recording every word. My gut twisted, not from fear, but from frustration. I'd dealt with Karen and her HOA cronies before. This was their latest stunt, and now they had dragged law enforcement into their personal vendetta. I took a deep breath, forcing my voice calm. "Officers, I respect what you do. But this," I gestured toward the road where the HOA sign stood, "isn't your problem. The woman feeding you lies doesn't have authority here." Perez looked uncertain, but Raymond wasn't convinced. "We'll need to confirm with dispatch. In the meantime, please stay outside." I laughed softly. "You're not detaining me, and I'm not standing in my own yard like a criminal. You want to talk? Fine, but we're doing it on my porch." There was another pause. Raymond lifted his radio, muttering something into it. I could hear faint static and a dispatcher's voice replying. As they waited, I noticed a familiar figure standing down the road. Arms crossed, chin high, clipboard clutched like a weapon. Karen. Even from 50 yards away, I could see that smug smile, the one she wore whenever she thought she'd won. She was dressed, as always, in her HOA president uniform, beige sweater, big sunglasses, and that ridiculous lanyard with her name printed like a badge of honor. Perez followed my gaze inside. "That her?" "Yup," I muttered. "That's the queen of Evergreen Estates. You should probably know she's trespassing right now." Raymond ignored me, listening to the radio. A few seconds later, he lowered it, looking mildly uneasy. Dispatch confirms there's no record of this property being under HOA jurisdiction, but we still have to respond to community complaints. So you're telling me, I said incredulous, that you came all the way out here based on her word alone? Perez frowned. It happens. HOA disputes can get complicated. I took a deep breath, ready to argue again, but before I could, I heard movement behind me. Slow, deliberate footsteps across the wooden floorboards. Emma. She stepped into the doorway beside me, her hair still tied neatly back from the night before, and her U.S. Army uniform gleaming in the morning light. The officers froze instantly. Her posture was perfect. Calm, controlled, commanding. "Is there a problem, gentlemen?" she asked, her tone steady but edged with authority. Raymond cleared his throat, straightening like a cadet caught off guard. Ma'am, we were responding to a call from the local HOA about property violations and..." Emma's expression didn't change. "Property violations? Do you have a warrant?" "No, ma'am," he admitted. "Then you're trespassing on our property," she said coolly, "and as a federal officer, I strongly suggest you reconsider the source of your information before you act on it again." Perez's eyebrows shot up. "Federal officer?" Emma nodded. "Major Emma Lawson, U.S. Army Military Police Corps. This property is private, confirmed by county record. If your complainant is the woman down the street, you might want to remind her that after that unforgettable morning, word spread through Evergreen Estates faster than wildfire in a dry canyon. By noon, everyone in the neighborhood knew about the cop call gone wrong. Neighbors who had once been too afraid to even wave at me now peeked from their windows, whispering behind their curtains. The HOA had tried to use the police as their personal hit squad, and it had backfired spectacularly. But the thing about people like Karen was, they didn't know when to quit. Losing publicly only fueled her private rage, and I had a sinking feeling that morning's incident was just the opening move. I was right. The next day, while Emma was at work, I heard the familiar sound of tires crunching up our gravel driveway. I stepped out to the porch just in time to see Karen's shiny silver Lexus pulling up. She stepped out, dressed like she was heading to a corporate board meeting, pressed slacks, white blouse, pearl necklace gleaming in the sunlight. Her face was all fake sweetness, but her eyes were pure venom. Well, Mr. Lawson," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "I see you're still refusing to cooperate with community standards." I crossed my arms. "Karen, you brought cops to my door yesterday over imaginary rules. You might want to rethink your definition of cooperation." Her painted smile didn't falter. "I'm simply enforcing the bylaws that everyone else abides by. Your property, while technically adjacent to Evergreen Estates, still impacts our community's aesthetic value. Your unapproved fencing, your rustic shed, even your choice of mailbox." I cut her off. "My mailbox? Are you serious?" She lifted a manicured finger like a teacher correcting a child. "We have guidelines, Mr. Lawson. We can't have one property devaluing the rest. Your refusal to align affects all of us." I laughed outright, unable to help it. "Karen, you don't own this land. You don't pay my taxes, and you definitely don't get to tell me what kind of mailbox I can have." Her jaw tightened. "That's not the attitude of a good neighbor." "Neither is filing false police reports," I shot back. Her fake smile vanished. She took a step closer, her tone dropping. "I know your type. You think because your wife hides behind her uniform, you're untouchable. But the HOA has lawyers, Mr. Lawson, real ones, and they don't take kindly to insubordination." That word, insubordination, made me laugh again. "Lady, this isn't the military. You don't outrank anyone." Her eyes narrowed into icy slits. "You'll regret disrespecting me." "Already do," I said, and turned to walk inside. "Don't you walk away from me," she snapped. But I did. I shut the door right in her face. The satisfying click of the lock was like punctuation on the end of a sentence I'd waited months to write. For the next week, things escalated quietly but persistently. Every day I'd notice something new. A bright orange HOA notice of violation taped to my gate, letters stuffed in the mailbox demanding fines, and even anonymous complaints to the county about unlicensed construction. Each one was signed by EEHA Compliance Committee, but we all knew who was behind it, Karen. Emma handled it with the calm of someone who dealt with far worse than neighborhood politics. When I showed her the latest violation letter one night, she just smirked. "She's panicking," Emma said, folding the letter neatly before setting it down. "She made a public fool of herself with that police stunt. Now she's trying to regain control." "She's not stopping," I said, pacing, "and the county's already calling about these fake reports." Emma looked up from her cup of tea, her expression unreadable. "Then it's time we stop playing defense." I raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" She leaned back, the faintest smirk forming. "You know how she loves rules, how she worships her bylaws. We'll use those against her." That's when Emma laid out her plan, a masterclass in lawful retaliation. She'd spent years studying policy enforcement and legal documentation. If Karen wanted to weaponize the rule book, Emma was about to turn it into a trap. Step one was documentation. We started keeping detailed records, photos of every violation notice, recordings of every encounter, and logs of each false claim. Emma even called the county clerk to confirm our property's zoning status and got official statements confirming we weren't under HOA jurisdiction. Step two was exposure. Emma wrote a letter addressed to every homeowner in Evergreen Estates. It wasn't an angry rant or accusation. It was factual, professional, and calm. It outlined the harassment, the misuse of law enforcement, and the false boundary claims made by the HOA. We distributed it quietly, slipping one into every mailbox at dawn one morning. By noon, the neighborhood was buzzing. People started questioning Karen's leadership. I saw her later that afternoon, standing in the cul-de-sac surrounded by a few board members, waving our letter in the air like it was a declaration of war. Her voice carried even from 50 yards away. "They're lying. They're manipulating you. This is an attack on our community." But I could tell the tide was turning. The same neighbors who once nodded obediently were now whispering to each other instead of agreeing with her. The next evening, there was a knock at our door again. But this time it wasn't the police. It was two HOA board members, both looking deeply uncomfortable. "Mr. Lawson," one began nervously, "we'd like to apologize on behalf of the association for any miscommunication. There seems to have been a misunderstanding regarding property lines." I folded my arms, keeping my tone neutral. "A misunderstanding that involved armed officers showing up at my door." They exchanged a guilty glance. "We're reviewing that incident," the second said quickly. "Karen may have acted outside the scope of her authority." "May have," I said, incredulous. Before they could answer, Emma stepped out from the kitchen in her crisp uniform shirt, her badge gleaming under the porch light. "Gentlemen," she said smoothly, "I'd suggest that during your review, you also address her misuse of law enforcement resources. We filed an incident report with both the sheriff's office and the county attorney." Their eyes widened slightly. "You filed?" "Yes," Emma interrupted, "and we'll pursue it fully if the harassment continues. We prefer peaceful resolutions, but peace requires accountability." The two men nodded hurriedly, stammering their goodbyes as they left. I watched them speed walk down the driveway like they couldn't get away fast enough. For a few blissful days, things were quiet again. No letters, no knocks, no Karen. But calm was never permanent when she was involved. A week later, just as the sun began to set, Emma and I were having dinner on the porch when headlights appeared down the road. A familiar silver Lexus pulled up once again. "Oh, here we go," I muttered, setting down my fork. Karen stepped out, but this time she wasn't pretending to be polite. She looked furious, her cheeks flushed red. In her hand was a thick envelope. "You think you can humiliate me?" she hissed, marching toward the porch. "You think some letter and a few threats are going to scare me?" Emma rose slowly, her expression calm but icy. "You're trespassing, Mrs. Wilkins." Karen ignored her. "I've filed a civil complaint." "You'll be hearing from our attorney." Emma crossed her arms. "Oh? About what?" "Defamation," Karen spat. "Harassment. Slander." I chuckled. "You called the cops to our door, and now you're crying harassment?" Karen's eyes darted between us, searching for fear she wouldn't find. Emma stepped forward just enough to make her pause. "Mrs. Wilkins," Emma said evenly, "I suggest you speak carefully. Because right now you're making a false statement in front of a federal officer, and everything you're saying is being recorded. Karen froze. Her eyes flicked to Emma's chest, where her military badge was visible. The color drained from her face. I didn't realize, she stammered. You did, Emma said softly. You just thought you could intimidate us. That ends tonight, Karen's mouth opened, then closed again. For once, she had nothing to say. She turned, stormed back to her car, and peeled away so fast she nearly clipped her mailbox. I exhaled slowly, watching her taillights vanish into the dark. Emma turned to me and gave a faint smirk. Think she got the message? Oh, I said with a grin. She got it. Loud and clear. But what we didn't know then was that Karen's final act of desperation was still coming. She was about to cross a line no one expected, one that would make that first morning look tame. And when she did, Emma wouldn't just defend our home. She'd finish the fight once and for all. For nearly 2 weeks after that tense showdown, Evergreen Estates fell into an uneasy silence. The HOA meetings went strangely quiet. The notices and complaints stopped appearing in my mailbox, and even Karen's Lexus didn't pass our gate. It was almost eerie, like the calm before a storm. I wanted to believe it was over, that she'd finally realized she couldn't intimidate us anymore. But my wife, Emma, knew better. She'd spent years as a federal officer, trained to sense when someone wasn't finished yet. She's cornered, Emma said one night as we sat by the fire pit in the backyard. And when people like her feel powerless, they don't back off. They lash out. I glanced toward the dark road beyond our property. So what do we do? Emma's eyes stayed fixed on the flames. We prepare. Quietly.